Já vás vítám dnes večer na přednášce katalánského krajinářského architekta Martího Francha Batlloriho. A my jsme se ho pozvali v rámci naší série Krajina, kterou už od loňského roku v Norma Space rozvíjíme. A děkujeme CAMPu vlastně za poskytnutí těchto prostor a za spolupráci. A já bych poprosila Martího, jestli mohl začít. Can you start, Martí? Welcome.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here. I like to talk a lot about projects, so I'm going to start and then if maybe there are... First, I wanted to say I'm Catalan. I come from Barcelona and live in Girona, and we are... First, that's my third time in Prague. First time I came, it was in 1990, and the streets of Prague were having quite a strong moment. I remember candles, somebody had been killed recently, and there was this transformation moment. And we are definitely not in the same moment, but Girona, Barcelona, Catalonia, it's also, we are reclaiming from some kind of sovereignty, I would say. So 9 of people that were both in the parliament are either in jail or they are in exile. So yes, I'm one of those. So if you ever heard that the Catalan people are maybe very independentist, are very radical and supremacist and whatsoever, I'm one of those. And I want to just say that it's a pity that in Europe things cannot be sorted out how they have been sorted out here. When somebody has some expectation, it goes through the referendum. But anyway, I just need, that's my biological. Then I want to show you about one of my first ecological influences, that in my childhood I saw this film that if anybody can help me to get a copy, I would really like to show it to my son that is here, because it's not easy to find. And I really felt in love with the girl in the film. It was so then later on, this became one of my favorite books. This wonderful writer you used to have here. This is the book in Catalan, and I don't know, the translation would be, I have served the King of England, roughly. And then I'd like to start taking a bit of position about how I understand landscape and the project of landscape. And for me, maybe one of the strong issues about landscape design, perhaps regarding architectural design, is that the landscapes are clearly organisms, and they are always changing. The scale of the change and the time pace of the change may be very different, and I can point you out the System Park in Boston that was completely artificially made by Olmsted. And then after 30 years, you would have never said that this was kind of design, but it was a design as a green infrastructure, or this space in Marseille that actually it was first a harbor, and then it turned in the 60s as a massive car parking place, and now it's a public space. So actually, we could see that the landscapes are in a permanent state of evolution. And in fact, only those landscapes that can adjust, that they have this capability to adapt to the demands of the society at a given time, they survive. So it's not so different to the theory of Darwin. And I put that in the words of Dirk Simons. He says actually that even you could think that actually space itself, it's a temporal perception, because I think if you go to this square now, or you would go there in the 60s, you would almost never consider that that the city over a period of 100 years has completely changed itself. But cities to change, it's just a matter of a scale. So in fact, I think that many of our architectural decisions are taken considering space, and perhaps too little are taking design the time dimension of these perceptions, and also understand that the places are in a process of evolution. So in fact, the landscape design, it's a design very much related to process. Then I think it was 4 years ago, I read this book by Richard Sennett, that he said that often the architectural and public spaces, they had this quality of stability and of not adapting. And then when a space, a public space, it does not adapt, it becomes a dinosaur that does not have the ability to it's so big, it's so massive, that has the ability to change. And then I got into a kind of a panic, looking back to my own work and thinking how many dinosaurs I had designed and eventually built. And I realized that, yes, I did a few of them, that often I design spaces that they did not have actually the capacity or much capacity to adapt. Now, this has a general introduction. Now, I'm going to show projects, but I'll try to group the projects according to notions. And then the first notion I would like to approach is this idea of undoing instead of, doing. And it's reacting to a very particular project that is the deconstruction, actually, of this place here. This was a tourist resort built by the French company Club Med, that was settled in the north coast of Catalonia. This is literally in the border of France, and this is exposed to the northern wind. So it's a place where the sea brings salty water, and there's a it's a very powerful place, okay? And actually the mission that we got, but that was not our invention, was to really renaturalize full urbanization. This is a completely unusual mission, and it was, there are just some data, there were 90 hectares of surface, and the cost of the project was 7 million, and let me show you a bit what it was about. So the project itself was about deconstructing all these 430 little huts and restaurants and amphitheaters and other restaurants and tennis courts and everything, to leave some parking space. And then actually, although it was not in the first mission, we proposed to leave some of a path so that you could actually visit the site. Beside that, there were all sorts of, once you get deconstruct something, there were good or bad ways to deal with all the recycled material. So the project had, this is the master plan of the rather than this is the master plan, and it's a process. It's a process of what we did with the invasive flora that came out from the gardens of the ice plant, that it was covering the protected rocks. What we did with the upper part of the buildings, which was done with non-local stone, and then it was crushed, and the wood would be separated, and the glass and everything was recycled. And what we did with the basement, which was done with local stone, and then it followed. So this project is very much about how almost a protocol or a procedure to deconstruct and go back to what was there. The project itself was amazing. It's probably the nicest modern movement or postmodern movement project in Costa Brava, but this was settled in all around well, when this was built, it was the time of dictatorship in Spain. Franco was alive, and then when democracy came, this became a natural park. So it was a spot in the middle of a natural park, and all around was protected. And then the model of this Club Med started having problems because it was too austere. People would have this room with no toilet, with no, so the whole system was a bit in collapse, and then it was a lot of pressure to preserve that space. So finally, the state and the Catalan government put money, and actually what we did is this. We completely deconstruct it and restore all the ecological process that would take place. But let me a bit explain you how we did it rather than the results. So this was a beach, and a beach, it needs a river that breaking sediments. If no sediments, no beach, right? And you need also the movement of the sea. And there are a few things here that they look very innocent, like this path there, but this path was actually on a dike, and this dike was fixing all the sediments, so the beach was disappearing. So the project itself, what did was get rid of the path that was, you see the water there? Reinstall all the ecological dynamics in order to get the beach process go back, and then in a slight small place we design this path that would still allow people to pass. This is the final result. And then sometimes that meant to go to the original level and go back up to 4.5 meters, 5 meters, just to make something as simple as this. So this, the water of the stream could go back to the beach, and then the rains and the water goes to the beach. It's that there's this French landscape architect that says we should treat nature as an ally and not like a guest. It's not about a garden that you water and you feed, and this is nature. So you just get the process going. And then it rained, and then the 1,000 plants came out of the sun, and then the wind came from the north with salt and killed them all. So it's a very dynamic process where nature is playing, and it's not about beauty or fixed images, but very dynamic place. This is exactly the moment where the plants were there, and then the northern wind came with the salt, and they were already dying actually by capillarity. This is a complete different project in Barcelona that has also to do with this idea of a bit deconstruct and use what is already inside on the place. This is a very, very cheap project. It really happened during the top moment of the crisis. And the municipality of Barcelona said, we have those 20 spaces, and took some teams and say, we have no money, just little money, do something so that temporarily it can be used. So that space was about, that's the surface itself that we're talking about. So when you have no money, what can you do? You can really not transform the site in depth. What you can do is to what actually judo does. You can use the force of the site to make it to go farther. So we did some mapping of the existing quality of the paving on some walls, and then we found out that just at the site of where we were building, the district of Barcelona had a storage place where they had, these are all pieces they used to build the streetscapes, the curbs and so on. So what we did is we did an inventory of it, and we name it, we calculate how many they had, and so, and then we use exactly the everyday material of the city of Barcelona, but in a non-conventional way. So that's kind of a summary where we use those existing windows, we remove the curtains, and then we paint it black. So at the end, when you would be inside and you would see the people walking outside, would be like if they would be performing in the theater. Or we use, this is the plastic pieces that they separate cars from bicycles. So we played with it all, but in a non-conventional way. These are the curbs, the granite curbs that they are used. So finally, with recycling, it's a bit, it's a completely different location, but this notion of recycling, and extremely cheap. This cost 25 euros per square meter. And a sidewalk in Barcelona costs 150, so that's already 6 times less that would cost any sidewalk. So we use painting because it was about changing the perception of a place that was initially perceived as unhealthy. We used painting, and it was very, very simple. And then the district was kind of happy, and we had already worked on that spot here. And then they say, sorry, in that spot here, and then they say, we give you as well, this has a temporary space, but not this. This is the one that will remain, we don't give you this. and that was the kind of the parcel next to it. And then we start working on it, and this is the model. So let me show you a bit. We work on, this is the place we had done. This is the place that should be permanent, but they didn't want us to do anything here, and they want us to do something here, just temporary. And when we came into the site, we said, this is so stupid. No, it doesn't make any sense. A high school should be built here. And actually, it's after 1.5 years, we finished the works. They finally started doing the high school. So this was really temporary, much more than we expected it. And but we did this project a few years after the club met. So the club met was about materiality, was about subtraction, was about not adding things, just about preserving the emptiness of the rocks and the stone and the wind. And here we are in the very center of Barcelona. I think after Paris, one of the more dense cities in Europe. And then they were asking us, could you please put ping pong? And can you put a basketball court? And can you put a fountain? And can you put children? And we minimalists, we're suffering so hard of having to put soaps. And it get to that point where we were completely defeated, and we start saying yes, but then double yes. Yes, you want basket, twice basket. And then we kind of turn into the opposite, and I'm using this sentence by a good friend and a landscape architect, Swan Ware from Australia, that she talks about the notion of productive frictions. So this idea that you have A, B, but when they really friction, sometimes you get a new kit or something happens that it's unexpected, and the juxtaposition of programs may occur unexpected things. And actually, what we thought it was, that's a bit of the concept, is we wanted to keep an empty space in the center that could be open and polyethylene, and you could do as many things as possible without fixing to exact thing. So we, like you do with the washing machine, we split it up, and then it accelerated the program, and it kind of came to the sides. So this idea that I put in the title, ecotons, productive ecotons, is the idea that in every wall could host part of the program, and the center would be a bit more empty, right? So that's some work that we did in practice in order to fixing in the wall, trying to, for instance, make a little children house, and then a picnic table, or whatever we could fix. And then we kept the wall to the street so that the people inside were completely safe. You could be very relaxed with your kids. No, they could not run out of whatsoever. And that's what we did. And with this idea of the productive frictions, we also kind of advocate for anti-monofunctionalism. So this is a very expressive painting, just the opposite like the other project. But this painting, or this paving that was painted, in fact, wanted not to be a basketball pitch, wanted not to be a ping pong pitch, wanted to be something that you would be confused. And when you are confused, then you're open to other things unexpected to happen. So actually, it worked incredibly well. I mean, it worked so well that anything that was not hard was completely destroyed. All the plantings, everything, the understory was completely overrun. So that's in this place where we put, these are kind of mirrors, so you can dance and see if you look good when you dance, and check your dancing. And they were playing badminton, and then there was, in the middle of the permanent space and the temporal space, we did a bench, but we also did not want to make a bench. We wanted to make a sort of a topography, let's say. It's a bench, obviously it's a bench. I'll show you later on. There was basketball, and there was but then this bench, it was, on the sun side, it was really, you could, like a solarium, and then on the other side was a place you could sit and look what was going on the other side. And there were all this, look at this. Darth Vader itself was playing here, and then you can have this, and you could have youngsters having a beer. Everyone find a spot there, and then we recycle some. You see this. This was just a site. The funny thing about this is that because the whole Barcelona people, or like in any big city, they don't love really to be told what they should do. So when you give a space where there's a bit of freedom, they really take it. And that's very nice. And it's not that we didn't really expect kids to go with that there. And then like this is just normal. It's a kid on a tree. Just that this girl is the granddaughter, of one of the most famous architects in Barcelona. So I was very proud that Beth Galí, she's one of the mothers of the discipline, and she was climbing the trees. So I don't mean that because of design they climb trees. That's stupid. But what I mean is that when you get people out of what they expect, then things are. And I love this photo. This photo was done by a friend who died recently. And when I look at this photo, I really think that. Imagine has a huge savanna, and in this savanna there are the giraffe and the elephant, and then the king is just watching about what to do next. Right? He's prepared. It's just watching what's the next move. And I kind of like these moments where projects you can chill out and a bit over. So that was this, and that was actually, this first group of project wanted to talk about the recycling and this idea of deconstruction, but the second wasn't that much. This second group of projects is really about ecological process and hybrid solutions between new programs, touristic or living projects in relation to nature. And it's very much about artificial nature, man-made nature. And you know that it's completely, well, it is said at least that we are in Anthropocene and we are responsible of the conditions of the Earth, but also of the future of the Earth, because if we don't react to it. So this is, say, maybe an optimistic approach to say, if we learn and perhaps make little mistakes, not too big mistakes, designing with the ecosystems, we may be capable to readdress certain conditions. So this project, it's a live project. It's a European-funded project that had 23 hectares. The first part was to restore habitats, and the second part of the project, which was rather small, it was to create an eco-museum for visiting the site and understanding the landscape, right? So the cost, I'm sorry, no, this is not the cost. I'll show you. Well, this is the cost. So the first thing, it was, again, it was a rather big place with very little money. So first, it was these drawings about trying to understand actually almost the beauty of the place, but also related to the processes that go with this beauty. No? Then this is the landscape itself. It's in a delta area. It's a completely flat area. It's all done with sediments, and it's a liquid landscape. It's all done with the water of the Ebro River. This area here was used to make salt. It was since the 13th century, the Arabs came and they started making salt. And then when the new technology came, the rice for eating was produced, and in exactly this canal here, there's the division between the sweet water, where you make the rice, and the salty water, where you could make salt. And in the 1980s, in this spot here, they decided to make a fish farm. So they changed completely these flat, vast, open areas of the salt fields into very small parcels in order to make the fish grow. And the life was to restore that into a system where we had two clients. Two clients, flamingos or bird life, say, and then a very, very small fish that is super protected, right? So our clients, we had humans that would explain the needs of these animals. These humans were scientists, and they would tell us, to make happy this fish, you need certain deepness of water. But if you want to make happy the warbles, or you want to make happy the flamingos, you need another. So the whole project, and this is somewhere in between the process, it was about 4 cross-sections. And in 4 cross-sections, we defined the mud flats, which was good for birds, deep water, higher earth, which is this area here, which was good for indigenous plants, and then somewhere in between, right? And then, yes, I think I did a very summarized version of that. So with this solution, we built 20 hectares of the project. And then we, on the other part, where the tourists had to be received, they asked me if I could make a garden for the museum. And this is, it's a place where there's a lot of sun, there's no trees, there's salty water, and a lot of wind. So it is quite, you could say it's it's almost impossible to make a traditional garden there, but what's the point to make a traditional garden? So in fact, you have salty water, and in our place, our country, it's rather dry. So we said we're gonna make a party with the water. That's what is really interesting. So could we make flowers with the salt, the crystallization of salt? These are flowers, in fact. So what we did is that the garden itself, it's a small scale version of a salt plant. We use exactly the same techniques that they use, but we turn it into a fake. It's a complete fake, a complete artificial garden, where the salt gets in different degrees of concentration to finally reach and get salt. And it's a very beautiful story that goes with it. And is that when the water gets to a certain salinity, they are a kind of algae that they thrive very well. They reproduce a lot. And then there are some microscopic lobsters that they love these algae, and then they eat them, and they turn red too. And exactly these microcrustaceae are the ones that flamingo eats. So in fact, you can design where you will have the flamingo eating, because you move the water, and when it gets to a certain point, you get the good concentration, and the flamingos go. So in fact, it's a bit of a joke, but it's true. If you understand the logic of nature, plus the logic of this industry of salt, you can really start having synergies between the two. This is this is the liquid landscape. These are the little basins where the degree of concentration is going up. There were some boats that you could hide, and that's it. Then this is another project that it's really somewhere in between nature design and housing in a way, and it's a resort. This is going to be a resort, and in the land. This is in the Atlantic, in France, and in the Atlantic coast, where Biarritz and Bayonne is, little farther north. And it's a place where eventually the water comes out and there's flooding. So the shepherds, they had to eventually work these places. And a very interesting person from Paris bought this piece of land. This landscape in France is completely flat. It's full of sun. The water is 1 meter deep. And it's full of pine trees. It's rather boring, actually. And in between this place, they cut 6 hectares to have the crop of corn crop. So to water the corn crop, they did a little basin. So that's the departing point. And then the client took the half of the surface and asked some architect to make a project about how he would make a luxury resort, that the luxury was to be next to the water and the landscape and to be in nature. He wanted a very Scandinavian thing. He was not happy with this first approach, and then he asked Patrick Arocharen, who is an architect, to do on that. And we team up with this architect to develop this project where we actually prepare the landscape, where then the architect would build the architecture. And because the sand is very cheap to move, it's not difficult, and the water was very soon, what we did is we multiplied the littoral, the coastline. And there's nothing more wanted than everybody wants to live next to the sea, to the lake. So we did that. We made a complete fake. This is inspired in the Norwegian fjords in the middle of France. It's really ridiculous, doesn't make any sense. And we also said, well, this is flat, but because we want to give some intimacy to the new housing, we take the earth here and then we try to give intimacy. This end up with a proposal that was a proposal that the landscape architect proposed to Patrick Arocharen. The idea was that you would have 3 typologies of houses with the feet on the water, houses, bigger housing on a prairie, then the common house, and then this is the house for the family who is going to live there. This is a bit of the idea of how we would integrate the plantings and so, and that's the whole map. It's this. This is a map about topography, and it's a map about where we excavate and when we did fill in. So roughly you can see the initial shape of the lake here. So everywhere in blue is where we excavate, and everywhere in brown. And this different topography allowed us to create a new beach and to create, for instance, up here, the house on the dune. So it's completely an artificial landscape. But this completely artificial landscape, it's done completely following the premises of nature. So at the same time, we were trying to say, when you walk here, to preserve the intimacy, understand the logic of variation of the heights of the water, and actually, next to water, vegetation really naturally grows very fast. So that's a rendering before we started the project of the houses of the lake. There were bigger family houses, a swimming pool, common house, and the house on the dune, the beach. So actually, it was the house on the lake, a house on the beach, and house on the dune. It was a bit what we prepare, and then we explained as well the client that he would have to have some patience, because when you work with sand, it takes time to get rich, and then we did it actually. We removed the upper part of the earth, put it aside, and we did the topography. This is not the architect's model. These are my practice. Actually, my practice is half done. It's horticulturalist. I am myself an horticulturalist and a landscape architect. They are architects and they are biologists. So within the team, we produce this imagination of how we imagine actually the sequence of arriving to your own house and to have this intimacy and to be related. And then this is after construction. I think this is, I would say, 2 years after the construction. This is how you reach by the back. By the back, you get into the housing, and this is how it's getting. This is how nature completely took over. It is a project that cost 27 euros per square meter. Like the houses cost 2,500, and the landscape 27. So it's, you can calculate, it's almost 100 times less than the housing, right? So what we did here is we initiated an ecological process, and we understand incredibly well with Patrick Arrocheren. So it was a complete, was incredibly interesting and rich, the process of interacting with him. And then the water makes it all. I mean, you have this evaporation, and you have these moments. And when the light changes, is so nice. So then this is the beach house, where you go and have breakfast, if you like, and so on. Now, this is a complete different project, okay? This is when I said I was worried about being a dinosaur. That's after the panic came this sort of project. And this project, it's a self-initiated project. So this is a project that came from my practice with no mission. So we like non-governmental association, losing money, investing time, and like a research project, we are trying to do that. This is my hometown, Girona. Girona is a small town. It has 100,000 people. And we are trying to make a kind of a ring of green spaces that would be the biggest facility in town. Actually, the biggest equipment in town. I'm deliberately using what architects use as a facility like a school. To me, will be the biggest ever facility for the town. So let me show you, if you ever go to Girona and you go to the touristic point, and you say, can you please give me a map? They'll give you a map of this area here. Okay. If you insist and you say, no, I really would like a map of the city, then maybe they give you this part. And if you really, really insist and you kind of, You say, I won't move until I get the full map, then you get this. So I make a bit of a joke because I just arrived today to Prague and they give you this tiny part of Prague. No, they don't give you the whole picture, right? So I'm going to tell you what this map, this is official map of the municipality. It says the names of the streets. It points out the urban parks. It relatively shows one of the rivers, and it points in pink the public facilities, say schools, auditoriums, museums, whatever. So let me show you what is not in the map. This is what is not in the map. This is the the forest around the city. This forest, at the moment of that I started the project, this is an urban park. Sorry, this is a park, but this is completely not in the map, right? Or this place was not in the map, or this place was hardly in the map. This place with olive trees, which is, we are quite in the north, so it's quite rare to have olive trees with this beautiful red color. It's not in the map as well. So actually, I realized that my city thought that the place I love was this. So I removed all the, so I put in, I removed the color, and all I wanted was in this map. So I thought, it's really this my hometown, and I said, perhaps there, oh yeah, actually there are 4 mountains in the city that they are never shown on the map. How this could be neglected, the full mountain that it's not in the map. And beside the big river, there are other rivers too. How can it be that in the maps they are hardly acknowledged? So basically, the utopic moment of this vision, it's to say that in the 20th century and 19th and 20th century, all the city extensions we had in Girona were about building new housing and extending the city. Now there's not me, but it's a general understanding that the city has get to its borders, and it's now maybe time to renew the existing housing and to renew the existing tissues, but not to grow farther. So my point is that maybe this time the extension, it's a green extension. It's not a gray extension, it's a green extension. And you may know in Barcelona, there's this idea of l'Eixample, no? The grid, l'Eixample, which means to expand. So my political point here is to say that the new expand, it's about expanding. But how can you go from this model, which is the one acknowledged, to this model, which is 8 times more surface? That should cost nothing. You cannot pretend you're going to make 8 times more surface. So actually the question is not to make a beautiful map, say that you will have 6 million square meters. The challenge here is to think, how can you make it possible? That's, I think, important point. And, well, related, generally related, we know that in small places, in nature, and big places, humans and animals perform different. If you have a small habitat, you can have those animals. But if you get bigger, you can also have bigger animals. So, but with human beings, it's a bit the same. This is a work by HNS, this Dutch practice, and there's a beautiful essay by Dirk Simons that I already mentioned before. It's called Big is Beautiful. And it says as well the public uses that you can have, the bigger it gets. So what if the important thing would be to make bigger? Yeah, big is important too. So the notion, well, the kind of city we have in Girona and in most of European cities is a city where the green spaces are done with archipelagos and they are not really connected. So these deliver a kind of facilities. Now it's not absolutely, it's a general understanding in all over the world and Europe, it's that we should more focus on green infrastructures. And to link the word infrastructure to green, it means that they should also have continuity and that you should also put into value the everyday nature, the proximity places, not only the remote natural places somewhere very far away or the very beautiful historical parks in the center, but perhaps there's the challenge to see of these huge areas all around town. So in fact, in Girona, there's a hell of a lot of sports. I'm not sure if it get here, people running, marathon, 100 kilometers. And unlike some of the topics, this is an statistics about what does Spanish people like in 2015? And number one, it's not going to the bar, it's going for a small walk. Maybe in your neighborhood, dog walking, maybe shopping, maybe, that's number one. And number 8, just before going to the bar, there is going to the countryside. So even the Spanish, we like walking. It's interesting, because my point is that perhaps what we are actually asking the most to our public urban spaces, public spaces, is distance, continuity. It's maybe not to have a hyper jowl, beautiful like this, where you spend millions, but maybe a long line. Maybe this is more appropriate, maybe. Or maybe a line that connects other places. This is much more effective. And in fact, if you look, this is the jowl model, but it's linear. It's the Hyde Park in New York. I've been told like about 5,000 euros per square meter. This is something that have done in Paris, that they did in a much more cheaper way, but also they recover the banks of the Seine. And this is in my hometown, that they recover, and in many places, former train lines into tracks. And you know La Ramblas in Barcelona, no? It's a very popular street. So the legend says that people in Saturdays, we would dress very elegantly and go to the La Ramblas to a little bit. And this still happens. People go to La Ramblas. In Barcelona, not only tourists, but in Girona still happens. This happens. But now this article say, that the people now go La Ramblas, not in the city center, but they put sport clothes and they go on the countryside. So there's a change, a bit of paradigm, and there's really a huge demand of public spaces. So the back of our cities in European and in Mediterranean conditions, it's perfect place when you finish the works, construction works of your house, you put the fridge there, or you kind of hide it's really a backyard. And what we try to do is to say, with no money, with no mission, could we ever change physically change those spaces, but actually mentally change? So I myself walked to the municipality of Girona, a very small one, and I said, if for 1 year I make for free plans about how you should maintain and take care of those places, like would you put the people that they go once a year or maybe twice a year and cut it a little bit, would you play with me? And actually I got a completely positive response. And we started with a pilot project. So the pilot project was about, say, this is us, sometimes working with herbs higher than us, trying to, like in the Wild West, trying to reconquer spaces that would have been agricultural, but the agriculture has been lost, and then and trying to make something that was not cutting it all or leaving it all, but to find a balance between better for ecology and better for public use, but also with a strong design input. Because in our culture, if you leave a prairie like this, which is maybe very good for nature, people think it's neglected. But if you actually use very geometrical and clear cuttings, people understand this is not a neglect, this is part of will. And there's this beautiful and interesting essay by Nassauer that actually talks about that often human being in messy ecosystem needs some patterns of orderly frames in order to transmit a feeling of care. If there's no feeling of care, people neglect those spaces. So these are already 6 months after we started, very simple things. I mean, this is someone with a mower or somebody, I don't know who you call it, a cutting thing like this. Very, very simple. And this was actually supported and based on a very ecological and common sense thing is that if these are regimes of care, regimes of cutting, so if you cut very often, 6, 8, 12, 25 times per year, you get a low place, and then people can walk, and there are some animals that may use it. If you cut it once, eventually twice a year, you get a high prairie. If you cut it once every 5 years, you get shrubs and so on. So this is a very general, and everybody knows that's called ecological succession. And also, it depends of the time of the year where you cut. This would be if we would cut with the mower to get the grass, then the ladybirds would not be happy and would not reproduce. But if you wait until they make the babies, then you cut later on, ladybirds are happy. Ladybirds, butterflies, and so on. So this is a parody of a serious ecological approach that it says that this is not, it's a bit hard for you to see, but this is where we cut, where people can walk, and this is where we don't cut. So there's really a spatial design. It's ecological design, but with a spatial design. And these are the percentage. So 50% of the place we do nothing. We let it grow to forest. 25% of the place we let it be high prairie, so we work less than before. And basically 25% we work more intensively than before. And this contrast makes a whole difference. And it happens in this place here. So there's 20% of the place that before was not accessible, now it's accessible. And it makes a complete kind of public space that in Barcelona, they start calling it not urban, so between the two. And these are places that this is in different moments of the year. There's places, you can see a drone photo. It's places that it's not million people. Nobody really had make a publicity campaign to explain these places are available. So at the moment, there are places that when you go there are incredibly peaceful, and it's not a place you maybe use every day of the week, but when you go there, it's very special. And that's, it makes, at the moment, I hope that it will be a place that will be used more on a regular basis. But here, people come to see the sunset here, and they come with a glass of beer, and they're really feeling like you can, it's big enough as well. You can have a group there and there, and you really have this feeling of being in nature, but actually you live there, right? The cost of this, it's from 1 to 2 euros per square meter, 1 to 2 euros per square meter. So here, it's a place that was all cut, and here we convinced that maybe in this area here, we could keep it more wild, right? But also, again, we played with the geometrical cuttings and then make round spaces that you could stay and rest and so on. And this is the river. That's the second year. I already start being a little bit paid for this second project, which was actually the recovering of the riverside. And this image of people in a river, this image, it has not been seen in Girona for 40 years. First reason is because the water was completely polluted, and until democracy, there were not depuration plants. But the second reason was because the vegetation was so tall that you could not reach the river. So this, because the vegetation grows more, this is more like between 2.5 euros per square meters of maintenance. And what is interesting here is that you use the human force, the staff that makes maintenance and turns them into designers. Or we first make the design ourselves. We learn from them about the techniques, and it has been an amazing process where the chef of these people, that we call him the curator, actually, the curator has empowered himself, so he now it's expanding the system without absolutely no need of us. So what started like 2 pilot projects, you can see here more images, then it turned into a protocol. So flat areas, heritage, and slopey areas, and this protocol has some easy to follow instructions, and then the people from the brigade, I would say 70% of the cases, does completely respond without a designer. So who did this? Well, it was the staff of the brigade, the technical service, but also the staff. Then it was, say, us, in fact, together also with the technical part of these people. And then we also engaged the local neighbors into a series of workshops. So we organize walks in every neighborhood in order, where we intervene, in order to for them to explain what they thought was the more interesting parts, but also for us to invite them to know what we were proposing. And finally, some schools that they need to make their training periods come to work for free. So it's about using all those energies, and this is probably the non-dinosaur solution that we found, and that we are kind of happy. This is a place how it was before, completely overgrown. Then the first step that costs no money, there has been in the pilot projects, there has been a transmission of knowledge, creation of knowledge together with the public services of maintenance. So this first step, they do it themselves. And the place has changed, and now citizens can already come. There's a second stage to this, where I think it's good that there's a design in terms of a more refined reading of place, basically spending time discovering moments, but also when you build a little, and that's these places here, places where you make little interventions, very little things that also make people aware of certain details. We call that confetti, like in the parties. And then finally, if you get, that's little money, right? Pocket money in a way. If you really get money, then you fix the path. You put, because all this, there's no, the path have no paving, it's just mown. So, but the interesting part is that now we are managing about around 100 hectares of town with this very, very low cost. And if we could not find a very, very cheap, low-cost way to do it, we could never dream about 6 million square meters. So sometimes I mean is that sometimes it's like it's relatively easy to make a top-down planning thing, but what for me it's very, very challenging sometimes to home from bottom up. You create the operational, the mechanics, in order to make it possible in a way that is sustainable from that sense too. So these are these confetti moments. This is for looking for fossils, always trying to play with people with these moments. Second year or third year, actually, they started a London festival, and they choose some of our spots to play stuff. So there was this cultural dimension being added to it. It's a viewpoint that we built with one singular small project, the land to look for the fossils. So you actually walk in there, and then you are invited to come here to look for the fossils. And so the school, that's where my kid goes to school. Because this fossil thing was, then they were invited to make an excursion to go to visit. So it is a kind of a force. And then this is a photo from last weekend. There's a kind of a flower festival that they do terrible flower arrangements in town. But out of that, we managed to get a little money. And with this little money, we finally could build, this is a kind, we call it tatami. It's a place you can go and really be comfortable there. Because at the moment, everything with it was to pass through, was not really to stay. So you can see, it's not the sunset, but if you trust me, the sun is already going there. It's really nicely placed. And you can have a memorable, so not happy with this and trying to copy the French school of linking art with landscape, say, we organize a meeting with a number of people who organize art events in the city, music events and art events and so. And we said, why don't you try to use certain of those spaces? They are now available for you. And to be honest, the response has been not impressive, because when, for instance, they make a concert, they want to make sure everybody finds the place and they don't get lost. And so they are very, very, they have cautions about this. But we manage, there's a festival called Milestone about human graffitis. So we get this decoration plant way down the river. So we manage an artist to come. The land art they already mentioned. So gradually we are trying to do that. So the next step is, once we gradually get a non-project with no mission to start having a kind of a toolkit about how to action. We got a mission from kind of a planning mission. And this planning mission, I'm going to go quite fast, it is a dream. This is a route map. It's where we would love to reach with this. And basically happens in public soil or places that they are in an agreement with public soil, and we identify places that, for instance, for instance, this part here, no, it's this part here. There are places that they really need to buy land. But if you start saying, go and buy land, nobody. So we're taking them slowly and identifying critical moments that they need investment. But we are also saying we could start. And this is the overall plan. And this is, we work quite hard to make it in a way that planners from the city understand, but also citizens. So this is a typical poster of one of the mountains that is not very much known. This is the technical plan of the architects which define actions, and those actions are organized from difficult and expensive to easy and cheap. So there should be not many excuses to get started. And then for each of the 13, we found kind of 13 areas. We also proposed, or we asked the citizens to say, if you would have to choose a postcard from your natural area, what would be your postcard? So we tried to find ways not only to really change the place, but as we talked before, to change the perception of citizens about the place. So these are 13 geographical entities that make sense. So that's the one planning we were talking before, the technical planning with the nasty moments, the difficult ones, the ones that need really planning movements, and that it will take long time to do them. This is the legend with all these degrees of difficulty, and this is €1, €2, €3. So it's kind of like this, a kind of a correlation between the investment and the result. Then how we try to reach press, and there's all this Rambla, the famous street, green Rambla next to the river. That's we place this kind of chair. So it's this, and then we got little things like this is a new postcard. It's really a new postcard, and it's taken from one of our beam points. And I don't know, is Decathlon popular here? The sports shop? Okay, so we say Quechua. It's a new tribe. It's an urban tribe, a weekend tribe. The people dress up Quechua and go to the land. So we are very, very proud that the Quechua choose one of our reclaimed landscape, our recovered landscape, to make an advert. So when you go in our supermarket, Decathlon in Girona, they're using one of the places that we have recovered. So the final thing is not happy or trying to get money, because finally we don't get money for, like, we don't get a real mission. We say, what if we try to explain, to look in 10 different ways the same place? So the first, I already told you, it was the no place, no? Then we say, what if we, for instance, I don't remember how many I have. Well, let's say we did 10. One, this is the most conventional one, is the ecosystems. That's the one map that almost every city has. But we also went and bothered to take photos, and I'm sure almost 98% of people in Girona don't know all these photos. So don't know about the diversity and richness of the landscapes in their own hometown, right? This is a one that it shows the neighborhoods and the distance. It's 2 minutes distance, 5 minutes distance, 10 minutes distance. So it's also a way to say, okay, this is the very center. This is where most of the money goes. But if you live here, you won't go walking every day there. So it's a very democratic and distributive way to invest money all around this area. This is, again, if it would be the other way around, the people who are This is 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes from the green area. So you can see the people who are more distant to those natural spaces. This is my favorite one. This is about health. You know, OMS, the Health Mundial Association, says that adults should walk at least 30 minutes every day, kids 1 hour, right? What we did here, these are the 13 loops, and they are organized in distances of a kind of everyday walk, weekly walk, like the month walk. But it is a way as well to say, this is not about saving birds, or it's about health, it's about saving birds, it's about quality of life, it's about it's about tourism, it's about, so with it, these are about, for instance, heritage. And what we did is, you know, Michelin Guide says, 3 stars, Michelin, is you should organize a trip and go. 2 stars, if you are in trip, you kind of take the crossing and go. And 1 star is, if you are next to it, stop, please, okay? So we invented a system of valuing all these areas that were not in the map. And we did it with 2 different systems. Landscape and more architectural or historical. Then we put together all the postcards that we choose together with the neighborhoods, with the neighbors. So we get 50 new icons for the city. So it's all this is about it's about building a new changing a place, but also building a new understanding of a place. Now we don't know if we will get. This is about. I think I want to explain this one. This is about desperate, because we still don't get money, even though we try very hard from the municipality. We get very little money. We tried with Europe, all right? But I don't know the response. I think I'll skip this part, and I'll go to the very end. Is I tried to present families of projects more related to ecology, maybe to planning, about this idea of a capacity to adapt, right? To take decisions gradually, to have the capacity to improve the project step by step. But to me, you never, like, at the end, all our projects, they start and finish with a walk. And that means for me the experiential dimension of design and the scale of design, or your body in the landscape. And I use this word, choreography. It's by Lawrence Halprin, that was this North American landscape architect. The wife of him was a choreographer. And then he, inspired by his wife, started talking about this idea of designing the path system exactly as it would be a choreography where you would move through the landscape. So I'm going to finish with the one project that I start explaining, which is the project of ClubMed. The ClubMed project had 2 parts. The one part was about recovering an ecology system. And then the second part was to, I like to think of it as I would take my best friend for a walk. What I would show to this, my best friend, no? And that's a bit this project. And in order to explain that magnificent piece of the coast that was turned into a tourist resort and then recover, before we did this movement, we tried to understand how the society was understanding that place. And for instance, the one project, it's in a village called Cadaqués. Cadaqués is where Dalí, the painter, was living. It's his home village. And we knew that, for instance, there was a rock within our site that he used for inspiring for some of his paintings. And Dalí talked about the double perception of things. No, you always could look at a painting in 2 different ways. And also we knew that Dalí, this is original drawing by him, that when the French came to make this resort, he was giving them tips. And he said, between this rock there that it's called the eagle, which is this one, and this one that it's called the camel, this is a place for gods. You should not build there. It's not for humans. And you should build backwards. the French, they built in between when they won. Dalí, that was a very money-friendly person, went to all the parties the French organized, so then it wasn't that bad. But there is this recording of this idea as well, collected by kids that go there, that they are capable to play with the landscape, not interpret the geology, the layers, the Pleistocene and the Mesozoic and the 200,000 years ago. And so not playing with the rational part of the brain, but playing with the emotional part of the brain. And for us, that was very important for the project. Then we bought all the postcards we could from the nearby areas and the area, and we could see that the photographers, they saw the landscape not like a kind of a sweet, beautiful, cozy place, but like a rough, windy, fierce place, no, like a bit into the wild kind of sort of place. And then we knew as well that for the recording of a film based on the novel of Jules Verne, the light at the edge of the wall, which is supposed to happen in Chile, at the southern tip of Chile, so the windiest, the roughest place in the world, it was cheaper to come to Cap de Creus. So basically the idea of this imaginary was of complete wilderness, roughness, hardness, not about any vegetation or tiny, no, it was about kind of nudity, I would say, nudity. But then we are designers, so it's again like the one project in the salt places. It was about 4 construction details or 5. So all this reading, all this trying to be sensible and all these things, it turned into this map. And this map tells how we would how we would work on top of an existing path. So the entrance path, we narrow it down, so we cut it. But then because we cut it, we also had to kind of confine it in order to make it. And then we use the stone from the basement of the housing and the local tradition of making dry walls. This is precisely beside the beach, that because we wanted to save the sediments, we had to trace a new path, and that was newly built. And it was one of the biggest pleasures I have in life is just to see the path, to decide exactly to first we kind of try to do it we walk on site, then we try to do it in AutoCAD or in practice. But then when it comes to the day of building, that you are on site and you put the things, it's amazing. So we actually did not have money to spend on expensive materials. So what we had to do was to have a very enduring material. We spent 7 million on this project, but ever since that was 2010, nobody ever went for maintenance. And we know because the natural parks are very poor at home. So we had to make a cheap, but also very endurable material. But we did not surrender to have this kind of finition. And the Ardevils, the technical people who work with that, invented this kind of zip that help us sorry, you have to imagine this was already asphalt. Then we put this layer of sub-base to make it even, that it would not. And then this is just a way to confine, and it looked terrible. It really, at the beginning, was, oh no, what have we done? It's too bad, you know. But then the sun burned it. Well, we kind of knew it because it used to be asphalt, so we knew it. And then after a while, but we had even home discussions about this. Then it turned, and then in certain places we saved the basement of some housing on the new part. And then it was this precise moment at the entrance. This is the parking place. And this is this kind of orange rocks that you have seen and they have forms of eagles and camels and so. And because we did this project in 2 months, it had to be done, you know, the way, very fast. We first said that this would be asphalt. But as the construction site was going on, we said, oh no, we cannot put asphalt there. This is too bad. And this is the way we did the entrance. This is our friend, the camel. This is the way we try to you put the cars kind of there, and then you put these big elements that kind of guide you. You walk through them, and behind there are the information, but it's not this kind of information that kind of it's very aggressively polluting, I would say. Such a beautiful place. No, you don't want too much information. So then we had this, and this had to be asphalt, and it was terrible. So we finally negotiated with the builder that he would not put asphalt in the parking, he would leave it without asphalt, and on top of not putting asphalt, because we save money, this he would completely destroy it. We were hoping that he would just leave the rock. And you know this place in the United States that they have the faces of the presidents? So we didn't want our face to be there, but we wanted him to really make an artisan work. But because the club met when they were building, so this is completely improvisation. That was between the process of construction, no plans before. They used dynamite in the 1960s to open a path here. They used dynamite, so everywhere was cracking, and this is the builder, and he was getting really nervous, like Giuseppe was really getting pissed off because he was going down, and there was no way he could find the bottom, and it was cracking. So we kind of created a new concrete with local stones, well, not with local stones, that's not true. The local stones were not good to make concrete. So we look for similar stones. This is basalt, this is granitic, and this is another kind of granite. And out of a number of trials, we finally could create a stone that was rather similar, you know? And actually, at the moment, I'm very happy that we could not make it all completely natural, because I think it's kind of beautiful, this contrast, formal contrast between one and the other. And then when you come here, you come from Barcelona, it takes you 2 hours to come here, and from Girona, 1 hour. So it takes quite, and you are still with the kids on the bus. Nice, and it's, you are a bit, and then you leave your car kind of there. You have to slow down a bit. No? You can, if you go running there, it's not nice. No? So you come here, and I'm not sure if you have been in the Opera House in Oslo. You have photos in the entrance. This is all white, and this is almost white. So when you come here, the light is kind of, and it's almost always sunny here. It's a very windy place. So you cannot, you just have to kind of close down. It's really rough. So instead of making you beautiful, it's like, puff, that you go into the site and you really have to face it, and it's hard, and it's really like the postcards a bit. And that was a bit what we, and it's actually, we could say this is 120 meters, that it's exactly the length of the outcrop, that it's like a belvedere, but it's a belvedere that you walk on it. It's not kind of an object that is beside. So that's what was at the end left. This is the parking. This is the metallic totems you saw. This is the first trench that you have seen now. And then there were as well kind of a secondary system of paths. One of them, there was a stream, so we had to kind of lift up a bit to let the water come down, and we use, I don't know the English name to that, this kind of a structural iron, but in corten steel that would integrate, very rough in a way. And then we also had to say, if you take your best friend, really the best friend, you just don't take it only in the mainstream. You also go and take him to the nice spot. So this is how beautifully the people from Kladmake, they had done the paths. They were really nicely done. But can you believe that this is, even this, that it's so beautifully done was too much? So we said we have to find a way to build a path that has no materiality. So in fact, the materiality of the site is those of the site. So this is kind of early time photo montage where we were trying to do what hikers do in the mountain, that they put stones, or you put any element that guides you to the next point, all right? So there were two girls in practice, Claudia from Porto and Gemma from Girona, and he's still working with us, that went to the river and start cutting pieces of 1.5 meters of canes. And they spent 2 months, well, 1.5 months actually, on site with stones, trying to find what would be the nice way to get to that difficult to reach point without having to add a paving. So you see Gemma here, and this is a moment where part was already built on, we did it on metal, and the other one still was on cane. It was, how could you really but really the nice spots. This is, sometimes it was very hard to work there, very tough ladies. This where the blacksmith, they had a lot of patience with us, and that was moments where we were trying to find out both images there, what should be the height of it, to finally this. This is a completely non-architectural approach, as you probably have noticed. So, because when you come here, it's like, wow, this is beautiful. But what is beautiful, it's obviously not the fence. This is not beautiful. What is beautiful is to arrive in that high moment and get this landscape getting open to you. But there were a number of other places that this is. Can you see this little crack? So the path, you maybe see there's the whitish area here. Eh? So the path was here. So by removing this, first you don't have to make so much maintenance. It's very easy to maintain. The cost of this, it is a certain cost, but you don't do it all the time. So it's also cheap. So the less you put, the less you have to maintain as well. So it kind of makes sense in a way. And it kinds of work. I mean, most of people wants to follow it, and there are people who do not want to follow it and don't follow it actually. And then it came to this moment and about these rocks. Can you see them? If maybe some of you can already see animals, maybe some of you don't, but this is what the kids do, and the fishermen did and the lead it. So we wanted to, well, this is a notion of the confetti of playing with people. We said we wanted to create a kind of this choreography or rhythm that we would pick a number of interesting rocks and propose people to play. You have seen this image, so nothing new to that. And so we did it very simple. We pick 9 ones, we draw the silhouette, and then we built into this kind of lanterns, I think they are called in English. So this is a curtain steel silhouette with there's nothing written. It's up to you to play or not. And they are done very low. They are not calling attention. Then they are orientated to the rock. So if you want, you can play or not. This is the one from the painting from Dali. And then there were also, so together with the main patch, the secondary patch, the tertiary patch, and then there were some viewpoints. And these viewpoints, they were done, except one, they were all done in a very respectful, minimal way. And the same character, you would come here by one of these metal fencing, and then this is the basement of a house. They were so beautiful. The way the architects did it was so incredibly beautiful. So we basically put a platter, we cut it, and then you could sit there. And then there was this, perhaps the most beautiful building, where the doctor, there were up to 1,000 people living here in the touristic campaign. So the doctor they had a doctor, and this was his place. But as you can see it here, the northern wind brings salinity, and it completely corrupts the cement and the concrete. And except the stone, nothing is withstand. So we did the kind of, we preserved 2 of the volumes, and so you could, when you visit the place, you can still have in your mind the dimension of one of the rooms. And then we did kind of tilting windows. And that was one day that every day you go there, this is different, has everywhere. And this day it really looked like a Rothko painting. It was beautiful. This is what you see when you are inside. And this is something that I'm not sure I would have done myself. But now that I've done it, I kind of love this idea of these super complex rocks, and then this actually super beautiful architecture. Not I can say it because it wasn't me. I kind of reproduce it, but there's this tension there that I think it both empowers both places. So I'm almost finishing. I showed the Belvedere that we did the most. Now I'm going to tell you the one that we did the less, and it has a bit to do with this philosophy of subtraction. This is the end. The main path ends here, and you can walk with a little track, but then basically the white one ends here. And this is a place where the cars would come and make back and then return. So you were here and saying, what can you do here? That maybe you just have to make people have the feeling of flying, you know? So that's where we just removed basically what we did. We put the asphalt everywhere to make it more durable. We removed this, and then we removed this. And we created this moment of kind of vertigo. And I'm using a sentence by Richard Sennett that at the same time is quoting Hannah Arendt, that she says actually that the everyday things you don't remember, but it needs to be sometimes a disruptive drama, something that you will remember. And I end my presentation with a photo of some friends of the family. Sean, a few years ago, that he came to the very end, and you know the film Titanic, where the moment of epic moment, and that's maybe my way to say that these people come back, and maybe they don't know precisely what epoch of geological epoch this was done. There is not an effort to create knowledge through the rationality, which is actually strategy, but these people come back with strong experience. And I think this is a very, so as much as I think there is a larger scale planning and a green infrastructure and ecological things, I think design is also about this idea that of putting things in relation with one each other, but without forgetting these moments where you really are in places. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martí. It was great. And now we have some time for questions. I can give you a microphone. So I can start maybe. From my point of view of architect, I would like to ask you, do you cooperate with architects? What's your relationship with them? Like architects who does buildings?
I think we do. In fact, half of my team are architects, right? And then I think 90% of our projects are done in collaboration with architects. And the collaboration that we do, well, it depends very much about the teams and also the epoch. At the beginning, I had to say yes to everything. At the moment, I'm in a position where I try to arrive to the site, as we talked before, exactly the same moment like the architect, so that we can team up right at the beginning. And I think then it's a continuous provocation, a ping pong. It's really to play with, and with the architects we keep working with, it is absolutely interesting. But well, to me, if I would, well, half of my team are architects, so I just, to me, there is this. You cannot separate architecture from landscape. It goes together. Yes.
Thank you.
I was going to say, oh, quite loud. Do you think this kind of technique could be applied to all kinds of cities that you used with your city, where you integrate the kind of surrounding nature and kind of reintroduce it into the city to create an ecology in the cityscape?
I think these projects need translation because of the planning politics of different countries and cities are different. But I do think there is the basement of this project, what to me it's different to other projects, is that you use the management, the maintenance regimes that normally are like, they are the designers that do something and then they arrive the other ones and they maintain that. And you turn this, that normally is a passive thing, into a design agent. And then this is it is really nice, the relation we have with this team of people, and it's really turned into a friendship and mutual knowledge, because we thought, we were arrogant, really arrogant, and we thought, we're going to tell you how to do management. And actually found out that they teach us lots of things at the same time that we put kind of a spatial intelligence into what they were doing. And I think this idea that you can, by the actions, not that they are done punctually like building, you're built, but with vegetation, it's if the moment the management stops, the place completely changes. Or if you want to gradually change, you change by changing the regime of care. So this idea of using the regime of care as a design agent, I think it can be applied, I would say, almost everywhere. Yes.
I think it's amazing to be able to bring the kind of nature back into the city. In many cities that are lost.
The thing is, nature is already working all the time to bring the nature back in the city.
The balance.
Very easy. It's if you stop cleaning, nature is coming back in the city. You just have to see the places, neglected places. The thing is, do you work with it? Or sometimes there are places that they are really seen as the back, and they have a very negative connotation. So do you make things to make it reachable? Do you make access easy? Do you even celebrate that with an event that make that the first time that people go there, it's a bit of a party, and it's not just you find it? So I think most of the cities have places with a lot of value that they are completely unknowledged. And then I also think that there are all these processes of nature that you can play with. And altogether, I think there's a lot of things that can be done, actually.
Thank you. I found that very inspiring. So.
Well, I take the chance to thank you for inviting me. If anybody knows how to find the film Brontosaurus, please help me to find it. And it's Friday, so thank you for coming. It's hard.
Just wanted to ask, why is it important to keep the budget so low?
No, you tell me. So I think that this is not a wish. That this is definitely not what normally is taught in the school. But if you want to get when you want to get to larger scale, and this had to do at least with this notion of green infrastructure, to me there's a switch from intensive project to extensive projects. And you can make a very easy comparison with having an orchard or having a wheat field. So you have always a very small orchard. It gives you the best of the earth, but you have to take a lot of care of that. But if you want to make beer, you also need the wheat. So this I think, especially in the design sphere, myself and colleagues, always trying to make the most beautiful spot with the most glamorous, and there's so little research and so little to make the extensive part. But I think that like walking by the river, you can make it with amazing paving and it's perfect. But if at the moment you can open up and keep going, so I think there is a bit of lack of bigness to be performative with climate change, with everything. It demands that the decisions, certain decisions, need to be taken at a larger scale. I'm not saying that a small square needs something or a building, but I think that we are in need of larger scale projects. And this, it's impossible today to do it with high budget. So where is the research about how to make low-tech, low-cost, extensive projects? Then this is one move. I'm sure there are plenty of them. But also, I think Basile-Lacaton in architecture, the French architects, that they also, in architectural terms, they say, no, people want square meters. Maybe they won't be completely perfect isolated, but they need sometimes more room because they get more kids and whatever. So I think it's interesting as well, this idea of how to be capable grow or to respond to larger scale challenges, or basically demand of more space. And then it's always about low cost. I think it's always about low cost. It's never about politics offering you money like this.
Thank you.
Can you expand a little bit on how you provided the spatial intelligence and the tools for the caretakers and the maintenance staff? And was this a plan from the beginning, or were you envisioning that with your design?
This is maybe the words we use and the sound. It's more sophisticated than it is. But in fact, imagine you go into a field that is like this, no? And there's the river. So you try to get to the river, right? It's sometimes it's very simple, or sometimes like we open up a new area last week. So there's first approach is that we make a general cleaning, and you see things that you didn't see before. Once you have this kind of general cleaning, you are capable to make a precise mapping that it's never an AutoCAD plan. It's done on site, and it's done with a lot of photography. So these projects that they are not so much about transforming a space, but giving value to a place, we do it a lot on topography. So we make, of Clatmet, we did 15,000 photos, just to give you an average. So and with the project in Girona, I don't know. We bought a drone to have. So what I mean is that this it's processual in terms of first you need to kind of have a minimum openness, or you can make an educated guess and then they do it first time, but then it's not done at once. It's very interesting is that you maybe find there's this path that goes to this beautiful viewpoint, and then when you are there, then you start seeing that there are branches of trees that they cut a little bit the views, and then so it's very much. In fact, it's funny because when you move, if you are not loaded with money and you move to a new apartment, like you don't usually call a very good designer and design your own house. You arrive with your old furniture and you put it there, and then you see, oh, the light is coming there. I'm going to move the table. So that's what I mean about responsible design, is that you don't do it at once. You do once, and then this special or formal is that you we did SketchUps. We did trials. We really draw it, but we draw it on top of photographies first. We draw it on plan, and then we do it. And when we get it wrong, because in one places we change it 3 times, we have to wait 6 months, and then we can change it, which is also nice. You cannot do it in a square. You cannot do it in a building, of course. But the spatial intelligence in general, and in this kind of project, I would say, it's rather easy. No, because it's not abstract. It's very perceptual. It's very tangible. If you go there and you find a beautiful fig tree, you maybe clean it up a bit. But the people who were doing the maintenance, they were treated like sheep. They would open the pan, they would go out and they cut it all. They go back and they remove them. And now these guys, I don't have photos here, but they are making labyrinths by themselves because they love it. They are starting to find spots where there's higher visibility, and they are inventing things. And there's, so I mean, this spatial intelligence, it took not a long time for them to, and now they don't want to see me very much. They want to do it themselves, actually.
But maybe it's because it's the people who spend the most time there. It's like,
yes.
It's very common sense and
yes.
By feeling.
Yes.
So it's not by like zoning which part is supposed to do what.
Yes. It's really about spending time there. And actually, what I'm realizing now is that we don't get paid anymore for these things. So like we go less than them. And then now they have, there's really an empowerment. So they still want to kind of show us, there's a stone, very beautiful. But in fact, they basically are pointing out all the most beautiful spots. They have them. And then there's maybe like for us, and we insist sometimes with having very simple geometrical forms, not too, but yeah. I think that to me, that's the most beautiful part of this project. It's this idea of creating knowledge, not myself, creating conditions for this knowledge to be created. And now it's quite self-sustaining at the moment, in that sense. And the work that we did last week, they came people from 3 different high schools that they work on professional works, people young that they have no expert, and the one who was leading them all was the boss of our staff. And he was so incredibly happy to, like, he felt so powerful. Huh? It was very beautiful. And then we designed some wood elements that I show you, and I was basically responsible to put those elements. The rest was working already.
It also creates the shared sense of ownership, I suppose.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I didn't show, we didn't have the photos. Now the other thing, it was funny, I know Gunther Bocht, the Swiss landscape architect. He had very beautiful benches cut out of wood. So I did a very bad black and white photocopy, and I said, why don't you try to do this? And now, because they're cutting trees all the time. So now they are really creative, and they make beautiful chairs but really geometrical, and I have nothing to do with it. I just gave them the photocopy, and we follow each other in Instagram, so we send information, and this guy, the one in charge, because actually at the end this is about people, precise people in precise places. This guy is a musician. It's somebody who has a lot of sensitivity. If we would have maybe somebody else, we would be talking about quite a different result as well. Maybe, or at least this degree of finesse, it wouldn't be there. It wouldn't be there.
Thank you for your answer.
Well, to be realistic, just one final point. The places that the brigade keeps are getting better every year. Now we have 4 years of experience, and it's beautiful because you can see 4 years older. 4 years, it's incredibly beautiful. Then 3 years, it's good. Now, and the first one is rough, or the week before is rough. Then there are other places that the municipality pays an external company to do this work. And these companies, they don't have this middle person, what we call the curator. And then in these places where there is no curator, the quality keeps going. It never goes better. So it's really about creating the conditions for having those key people in places. Otherwise, it's not evolving. It just kind of remains similar.
But when it has the right people, it evolves. So it's like a prototype, an iterative approach.
Sorry?
So it's like a prototype, like an iterative approach, if you have the right conditions. So it's getting better with every iteration, like with every year.
Yeah, it does. What I like about the prototype is that we had no believers on this project. And this idea of a small experiment, slow scale, low cost, with immediate results, that convinced the municipality to make the other project on the river, and the result convinced the municipality to make the strategic planning, and then the strategic planning convinced the municipality to apply for European funding. So, but it's sometimes it's also it's about kind of creating conditions with people, and it's also about being capable to show results quite fast. I think that's important.
Amazing work.
Yeah, this one I'm very happy, I must say. It's particularly close to me.
So, Martí, thank you for coming and great lecture.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming, and see you next time.